Hi, it's me. Welcome to True Crime Tuesday. Let's talk about John Wayne Gacy, shall we? John Wayne Gacy, born March 17th, 1942, was an American, serial killer and lower body offender. Known as the Killer Clown, who assaulted and murdered at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospitals and charitable events as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown, personas he had devised. One second, let me boost this font, child, because I'm losing my sight. According to Gacy, he committed all of his murders inside his ranch house near Norridge, a village in Norwood Park Township, metropolitan Chicago, Illinois. Typically, he would lure a victim to his home, dupe him into donning handcuffs on the pretext of demonstrating a magic trick, then lower body assault and torture his captive before killing him by either asphyxiation or strangulation with a garrote, I think it's pronounced. You know the little thing where you put it around the neck and then you twist it and it gets tighter. That 26 victims were buried in the crawl space of his home. I know that house had to be just stanky boots. Like, this is what I don't understand. How the house was stinking like that and y'all didn't suspect dead bodies until 26 bodies later. It's just not coming together for me. And 3 others were buried elsewhere on his property. 4 were discarded in the Des Plaines River. Is it the Plains? Des Plaines? I don't know. Gacy was convicted of lower backdoor body fun or not fun of a teenage boy in Waterloo, Iowa in 1968 and was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment but served 18 months. Y'all stay letting these prisoners out, child. The bad ones, not the good ones. Not the falsely convicted and not the ones who, stole a pack of gum on accident or stole some Pampers for their baby. Y'all don't let them out, but y'all anyway. He murdered his first victim in 1972, had murdered twice more by the end of 1975, and murdered at least 30 subsequent victims after his divorce from his second wife in 1976. The investigations into the disappearance of Des Plaines teenager Robert Piest, P-I-E-S-T, led to Gacy's arrest on December 21st, my mother's birthday, 1978. His conviction for 33 murders by one individual then covered the most homicides in the United States legal history. Gacy was sentenced to death on March 13, 1980. On death row at Menard Correctional Center, he spent much of his time painting. He was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center on May 10, 1994, which is 15 days before my birth. Early life. John Wayne Gacy was born in Chicago, Illinois on March 17, 1942, the second child and only son of John Stanley Gacy, who was born June 20th, 1900 and died December 25th, 1965. They'll have you know. And Marion Elaine Robinson, born May 4th, 1908 and died December 6th, 1989. Again, they will have you know. I don't know why that's important, but it's in there. His father was an auto repair mechanist and World War I veteran, and his mother was a homemaker. Gacy was of Polish and Danish ancestry, and his family was Catholic. His paternal grandparents, who spelled the family name as Gatza, G-A-T-Z-A, or Gacka, G-A-C-A, had immigrated to the United States from Poland, then part of the German state of Prussia, which I don't think Prussia. Do Prussia exist? We're not going to sidetrack about Prussia. Childhood. Gacy was close to his mother and 2 sisters, but endured a difficult relationship with his father. Always dead. An alcoholic who was physically abusive to his family. His father also belittled him, calling him dumb and stupid, and comparing him unfavorably with his sisters. One of Gacy's earliest memories was of his father beating him with a leather belt for accidentally disarranging components of a car engine he had assembled. Gacy couldn't have took being black, child, because we got whooped with belts and switches and all sorts of things for things similar to that. But anyway, I just read this. His mother tried to shield her son from his father's abuse, which only resulted in accusations that he was a sissy and a mama's boy who would probably grow up queer. I mean, yeah. Despite this mistreatment, however, Gacy still loved his father, but felt he was never good enough in his father's eyes. In 1949, Gacy's father was informed his son and another boy had been caught lower bodily fondling a young girl. His father whipped him with a razor strop, which is the thing that they sharpen razors on. It's not a thing with a razor on it, as punishment. The same year, a family friend and contractor would sometimes lower body touch Gacy in his truck. Gacy never told his father about this, afraid that his father would blame him. Gacy was an overweight and unathletic child. Because of a heart condition, he was told to avoid all sports at school. During fourth grade, Gacy began to experience blackouts. He was hospitalized on occasion because of these episodes, and also in 1957 for a burst appendix. I don't know why that's necessary to tell, but it's in the article, so here we are. Gacy later estimated that between the ages of 14 and 18, he had spent almost a year in a hospital and attributed the decline of his grades to missing school. Okay. His father suspected these episodes were an effort to gain sympathy and attention and openly accused his son of faking the condition as Gacy lay in a hospital bed. Although his mother, sisters, and a few close friends never doubted his illness, Gacy's medical condition was never conclusively diagnosed. One of Gacy's friends in high school recalled several instances when his father ridiculed or beat his son without provocation. On one occasion in 1957, he witnessed Gacy's father emerging drunk from the family base. On one occasion in 1957, he witnessed Gacy's father emerging drunk from the family basement to begin belittling, then hitting his son for no apparent reason. Gacy's mother attempted to intervene as her son simply put up his hands to defend himself. According to the friend, Gacy never struck his father back during these altercations. Better than me. Career origins. Child, he became involved in politics. He worked as a assistant precinct captain for a Democratic Party candidate in his neighborhood. This led to more criticism for his father, who accused his son of being a patsy, because you know their daddy was a Republican. Gacy later speculated his decision to become involved in politics was actually to seek the acceptance from others he never received from his father. The year his political involvement began, his father bought him a car. He kept the vehicle's title in his own name until Gacy had finished paying for it. Yeah, that sounds like a parent. These monthly payments took several years for him to complete. His father would confiscate the keys to the vehicle if Gacy did not do as he said. Yeah, that sound like my family. In 1962, Gacy purchased an extra set of keys after his father confiscated the original set. In response, his father removed the distributor cap, keeping the component for 3 days. Gacy recalls he felt totally sick and drained after this incident. After his daddy put the distributor cap back on, Gacy drove to Los Angeles. He found work and became a mortuary attendant. And he was sleeping on the cot, child, behind the embalming room. And then, he was observing embalming the dead bodies. And then he climbed into a coffin of a deceased teenage male and embraced and caressed his body before experiencing a sense of shock. So he called his mother and asked if his father would allow him to return home. His father agreed, and he returned back to Chicago. I'm sorry, John Wayne Gacy, like, all of these murders, and I'm talking about the murderer and not the murderees. What have I gotten myself into? On returning home, Gacy enrolled in the Northwestern Business College despite having failed to graduate from high school. He graduated in 1963 and took a management trainee position with the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. In 1964, the company transferred him to Springfield, Illinois, to work as a salesman and eventually promoted him to manager of his department. In March of that year, he became engaged to Marilyn Myers, who was a co-worker. During their courtship, Gacy joined the local Jaycees, and worked tirelessly for them, being named a key man in April 1964. That same year, he had his second homosexual experience. According to Gacy, after one of his colleagues in the Springfield Jaycees plied him with drinks and invited him to spend the evening on his sofa, he agreed. The colleague then performed lower body mouth moments on him while he was drunk, why? Gacy was ugly. By 1965, Gacy had risen to the position of vice president of the Springfield Jaycees. The same year, he was named the third most outstanding Jaycee in the state of Illinois. After a 6-month courtship, Gacy and Myers married. Mary Lynn Myers' father, he purchased 3 Kentucky Fried Chickens, and Gacy managed the restaurants, and that's that's it. He managed Kentucky Fried Chicken shop. And he was receiving $15,000 a year, which is the equivalent of about $123,900, as of 2021, plus a share of the restaurant's profits. So he was doing very well for himself. So yeah, he and his wife relocated to Waterloo. He opened up a club in his basements where the employees could drink alcohol and play pool, even though they were children. They were teenagers. He employed teenagers of both sexes at his restaurant, but he socialized only with the young men. Gacy gave many of them alcohol before he made sexual advances. If they rebuffed him, he would claim his advances were simply jokes or tests of morals. They had a son in February 1966 and a daughter in March 1967. Lord, terrible for those children. Gacy later described this period of his life as perfect. He had finally earned his father's approval. When Gacy's parents visited in 1966, his father privately apologized for the physical and emotional abuse he had inflicted throughout his son's childhood and adolescence and said, "Son, I was wrong about you," as he shook Gacy's hand. I just don't believe that happened. I'm sorry. For a man to just be like, "I'm sorry." No. In Waterloo, Gacy joined. There's so much. This is such a long, girl, I'm gonna have to do a part 2 because this is forever long. In Waterloo, Gacy joined the local Jaycees chapter, regularly offering extended hours to the organization in addition to the 12 and 14-hour days he worked managing the 3 KFC restaurants. At meetings, Gacy often provided fried chicken and insisted on being called Colonel because why wouldn't he? He and other Waterloo Jaycees were also deeply involved in wife swapping, prostitution, pornography, and drug use, so they was just wild. Although Gacy was considered ambitious and something of a braggart, the other Jaycees held him in high regard for his fundraising work, and in 1967 named him Outstanding Vice President of the Waterloo Jaycees. The same year, Gacy served on the board of directors. Oh my God, today. The assault of Donald Voorhees. Girl, what just rolled? Oh, a pen. I was like, something just rolled off my leg. It was a pen. In In August of 1967, Gacy lower bodily assaulted a 15-year-old Donald Voorhees, the son of a fellow Gacy. Gacy lured Voorhees into his house. Of course, the video stopped, because why wouldn't it? Gacy lured Voorhees to his house upon the promise of showing him heterosexual stag films, regularly played at Gacy events. Gacy plied Voorhees with alcohol, allowed him to watch a stag movie, then persuaded him to engage in mutual lower body mouth fun, adding, "You have to have lower body fun with a man before you start having lower body fun with women." Over the following months, Gacy similarly abused several other youths, including one whom he encouraged to have lower body fun with his own wife before blackmailing him into performing oral lower body fun on him. Gacy tricked several teenagers into believing he was commissioned to conduct homosexual experiments in the interest of scientific research and paid them up to $50 each. God, this is just terrible. In March 1968, Voorhees reported to his father that Gacy had lower bodily assaulted him. Voorhees Sr. immediately informed the police, who arrested Gacy and subsequently charged him with performing lower body crimes of the mouth persuasion on Voorhees and the attempted assault of 16-year-old Edward Lynch. Gacy vehemently denied the charges and demanded to take a polygraph test. The results indicated Gacy was nervous when he denied any wrongdoing in relation to both men, so I don't know why he said, "Let me take a test, child." Gacy publicly denied any wrongdoing and insisted the charges against him were politically motivated. Voorhees Sr. had opposed Gacy's nomination for appointment as president of the Iowa Jaycees. Several fellow Jaycees found Gacy's story credible and rallied to his support. However, on May 10, 1968, Gacy was indicted on the charge. Y'all know the charge. I just read the charge, so y'all don't have to reread it again. Witness intimidation. On August 30th, 1968, Gacy persuaded one of his employees, 18-year-old Russell Schroeder, to physically assault Voorhees in an effort to discourage the boy from testifying against him in court. Gacy promised to pay Schroeder $300. Schroeder agreed, and in early September lured Voorhees to an isolated country park, sprayed mace in his eyes, and then beat him. Voorhees escaped and reported the assault to the police, identifying Schroeder as his attacker. They arrested him the following day. While initially denying any involvement, Schroeder soon confessed to assaulting Voorhees, indicating that he had done so at Gacy's request. Police arrested Gacy and laid an additional charge of hiring Schroeder to assault and intimidate Voorhees against him. On September 12th, Gacy was ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at the Psychiatric Hospital of the University of Iowa. 2 doctors examined him over a period of 17 days before concluding he had an antisocial personality disorder, which is the clinical term for sociopathy and or psychopathy, child, and was unlikely to benefit from any therapy or medical treatment, and that this behavior pattern was likely to bring him into repeated conflict with society. The doctors concluded he was mentally competent to stand trial, and that should have been that. He should have stood trial. They should have put him in jail forever and ever, because the psychiatrist said he gonna do it again. Conviction and imprisonment. On November 7th, 1968, Gacy pleaded guilty to 1 count of sodomy in relation to Voorhees, but not guilty to the charges related to other youths. Gacy claimed Voorhees had offered himself to him and that he acted out of curiosity. His story was not believed. Gacy was convicted of sodomy on December 3rd and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment to be served at the Anamosa State Penitentiary. The same day, Gacy's wife petitioned for divorce, requesting she be awarded the couple's home and property, sole custody of their 2 children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor, and the divorce was finalized on September 18th, 1969. Gacy never saw his first wife or children again. Good. During his incarceration in the Anamosa State Penitentiary, Gacy rapidly acquired a reputation as a model prisoner. Within months of his arrival, he had risen to the position of head cook. He also joined the Inmate Gacy chapter and increased its membership from 50 to 650 men in less than 18 months. He is known to have secured an increase in the inmates' daily pay in the prison mess hall and to have supervised several projects to improve conditions for inmates in prison. By the summer of 1969, Gacy had overseen the installation of a miniature golf course in the prison recreation yard. So he was just having a grand old time, a ball. In June 1969, Gacy was denied parole. To prepare for a second scheduled parole hearing in May 1970, he completed 16 high school courses for which he obtained his diploma in November 1969. I'm not understanding how he had a parole hearing in 69 and 70, because don't the girls, it'd be taking like 10 years for the girls to get another hearing these days. On Christmas Day 1969, Gacy's father died from cirrhosis of the liver. When informed of his father's death, Gacy collapsed to the floor sobbing. His request for supervised compassionate leave to attend the funeral was denied. Good. He was granted parole with 12 months probation on June 18th, 1970, after having served 18 months of his 10-year sentence. A year and a half. He had 8.5 more years to go. And they said, well, just let him go. Are you insane? Are you insane? Iowa? Are you nuts? Conditions of his probation included that Gacy relocate to Chicago to live with his mother, and that he must observe a 10 p.m. curfew. On his release, Gacy told friend and fellow JC, Clarence Lane, who picked him up from the prison and had remained steadfast in his belief of Gacy's innocence, that he would never go back to jail, and that he intended to reestablish himself in Waterloo. He's going back to jail, so obviously that was a lie. However, within 24 hours of his release, Gacy had relocated to Chicago because, girl, if not, they was going to come get him. He arrived there on June 19th and shortly thereafter obtained a job as a short-order cook in a restaurant. On February 12th, 1971, Gacy was charged with lower bodily assaulting a teenage boy who claimed that he had lured him into his car at Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal and driven him to his home, where he had attempted to force the boy into sex. Woo, big surprise. Big surprise that the man that they said couldn't get, shouldn't be in society because he's nuts, and they somehow let him out with eight more years and a half on his sentence, did some more crime. That's just, I'm shocked. Like, girl, the court dismissed this complaint when the boy failed to appear. They shouldn't have. On June 22nd, Gacy was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct. The arrest was in response to a complaint filed by a youth who claimed that Gacy had flashed a sheriff's badge, lured him into his car, and forced him to perform lower body mouth fun. These charges were dropped after the complainant attempted to blackmail Gacy. The Iowa Board of Parole did not learn of these incidents, and 8 months later, in October 1971, Gacy's parole ended. I know it's the 70s. I understand that it's the 70s. They had mail and they had telephones in the 70s. How? The following month's records of Gacy's previous criminal convictions were sealed. With financial assistance from his mother, Gacy bought a ranch house near the village of Norridge in Norwood Park Township, an unincorporated area of Cook County itself, a part of metropolitan Chicago. Child, that is a beautiful picture of metropolitan Chicago. He resided at the address 8213 West Somerdale Avenue until his arrest in December 1978, and according to Gacy, committed all his murders there. He was active in his local community and helpful to his neighbor. He loaned his construction tools and plowed snow from the neighborhood walks free of charge. Between 1974 and 1978, he hosted annual summer parties, each devoted to a particular theme, at his old stanky house. It's just wild. These events were attended by up to 400 people, including politicians. Second marriage and divorce. In August 1971, shortly after Gacy and his mother moved into the house, he became engaged to Carol Hoff, whom he had briefly dated in high school. They were married on July 1st, 1972. Carol and her 2 young daughters from a previous marriage moved into Gacy's home soon after the couple announced their engagement. His mother moved out of the house shortly before the wedding. In 1975, Gacy told his wife that he was bisexual. After the couple had sex on Mother's Day that year, he informed her this would be the last time they would ever have sex. He began spending most evenings away from home, only to return in the early hours of the morning with the excuse that he had been working late. Carol observed Gacy bringing teenage boys into his garage in the early hours and also found gay pornography and men's wallets and identifications inside the house. When she confronted Gacy about who these items belonged to, he informed her angrily that it was none of her business. And at that point, Carol should have went to the police because these are teenagers. What is going on? Following a heated argument when she failed to balance a checkbook correctly in October 1975, Carol asked Gacy for a divorce. He agreed to his wife's request, although by mutual consent, she continued to live at the West Somerdale house until February 1976, where she and her daughters moved into their own apartment. 1 month later, on March 2nd, the Gacy's divorce decreed upon the false grounds of Gacy's infidelity with women was finalized. He was like, yeah, I'm going to let them lie and say I was sleeping with women because the alternative. Child, he had done established part-time construction business called PDM Contractors. The initials were for painting, decorating, and maintenance. With the approval of his probation officer, which you got a probation officer and your wife's not asking any questions. She's not clear on whatever. Gacy because I'd be asking the probation officer, hey, what he in trouble for? Gacy worked evenings on his construction contracts while working as a cook during the day. Initially, he undertook minor repair work such as sign writing, pouring concrete, and redecorating, but later expanded to include projects such as interior design, remodeling, installation, assembly, and landscaping. In mid-1973, Gacy quit his job as a cook so he could commit fully to his construction business. By 1975, PDM was expanding rapidly, and Gacy was working up to 16 hours per day. In March 1977, he became a supervisor for PE Systems, a firm specializing in the remodeling of drugstores. Between PE Systems and PDM, Gacy worked on up to 4 projects simultaneously and frequently traveled to other states. By 1978, PDM's annual revenue was over $200,000. He was a clown, child. I'm not finna read all this about him being a clown. He was a clown. He went to children's performances and he said being a clown made him regress to childhood, child. Oh, there is so much. I can't do anymore. I cannot do anymore, honey. We'll have to do a part two because I'm pooped. Okay, I'm so sorry that this episode feels like it was lackluster, but my God, today. I'll get you in the part two. Alright, sisters and brothers, we're back. I had to take a day because, wow, John Wayne Gacy, am I right? You're getting shoulder today. I don't want to show you too much. Because a girl has not been to the gym in many moons. Probably like a month. Anyway, let's talk about Gacy. Let's finish up. Girl, ugh. Okay. Murders. We're skipping to murders. I didn't have time to continue this man's life story because for what? For what? Oh, girl, I just realized that I don't have the right setting on my light. I need a warm light, honey. I don't want to look pale. Ooh, stay with it. Anyway, murders. I don't know why my voice is trying me today. Okay. Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys and buried 26 of them in the crawl space of his house. His victims included people he knew and random individuals lured from Chicago's Greyhound bus station. All right. Let me see, where was I? From Chicago's Greyhound bus station, Bughouse Square, or simply off the streets with the promise of a job with his construction company. An offer of drinks and or drugs or money for lower body fun. Some victims were grabbed by force. Others conned into believing Gacy, who often carried a sheriff's badge and had spotlights on his black Oldsmobile, was a policeman. Gacy usually lured a lone victim to his house, although on more than one occasion, Gacy also had what he called doubles. 2 victims killed in the same evening. Inside Gacy's home, his usual modus operandi, or what the girls call MO, was to ply youth. I don't know why they keep saying ply. I mean, I understand that that's the word used when talking about filling someone with alcohol. Not you can see my drill in the background. Child. Anyway, who cares? I've been doing some construction work up in this piece, and I'm not ashamed. Anyway, whatever. Who cares? His usual modus operandi was to ply a youth with drinks, drugs, or generally gain his trust. He would then produce a pair of handcuffs to show a magic trick, sometimes as part of a clowning routine. He typically there is nothing. Oh, my hair looks a mess, girl. I just pulled it out of a bun. Y'all know I stay in a bun. There is nothing in this world that would get me to put on handcuffs with somebody I just met tonight. There's nothing. Oh, girl, not this little fuzz piece, child. Get away from here. You're embarrassing me. Okay, nothing in this world. I just met this man this evening, and he's like, "Hey, put these handcuffs on. I'm gonna show you a trick." And he's doing a clown routine. Baby, the way I would have bust out a window and left if the door was locked. Not blaming the victims, just giving you my perspective. Just, hey girl, this is how I personally would have proceeded. Anywho, sometimes as part of a clowning routine, he typically cuffed his own hands behind his back, then surreptitiously, I had to stay with it on that one, released himself with the key, which he hid between his fingers. He then offered to show his intended victim how to release himself from the handcuffs. I still would not. My mama could walk in the room and be like, "Girl, put the handcuffs on. Let me show you some." And I'd be like, "Mm-mm." The answer is no. You're not going to incapacitate me. I don't care if you are my mama. My mama, my daddy, my cousins, my granny. Nobody. You'll never. Literally never. Anyway, it's just me, my personal opinion. He then offered to show his intended victim how to release himself from the handcuffs. With his victim manacled. What is it? Manacled? Now I gotta look this up because this is a word I don't know. Manacle? A metal band or chain or a metal band, chain, or shackle for fastening someone's hands or ankle. Okay, but how do you pronounce it? Let's go to Google. I need to know how to say the word, honey. Do love that you told me what it is. According to dictionary.com, it's a shackle for the hand or handcuffs.
Manacle.
Pronounced manacle. Okay. With his victim manacled and unable to free himself, Gacy then made a statement to the effect that the trick is you have to have the key. I hate him. Gacy referred to this act of restraining his victim as the handcuff trick. Very original, very creationary, honey, on the name. I think it's very creationary. Very creationary on the name. The handcuff trick. Wow, I wonder what it could be. A trick with handcuffs? Wow. That never would have crossed my mind. Hearing a handcuff trick. I hate him. I hate him. This is the first video where y'all see I really hate this man. Like, I've talked about a couple other murderers and all of that, and I could kind of almost have a little compassion. Like Ed Gein. It's like, okay, he has some issues. He might have been trans. Like, maybe, he had yada yada wrong with his brain. But Gacy, I just can't do Gacy, and I don't know what the difference between Gein and Gacy is for myself personally, but I just do not like Gacy. I mean, I don't like any of them. I don't like Gein. I don't like whoever else I've talked about already, and whoever else is to come. I don't like that they've murdered people. Eileen Wuornos, I don't like it. But Gacy, 33 victims, and you doing stupid stuff like the handcuff trick, it's just not coming together for me. It's not coming together for me. Having restrained his victim, Gacy proceeded to lower body assault and torture his captive. He frequently began by sitting on or straddling himself above his victim's chest before forcing the victim to lower body mouth fawn him. Later, I'm sorry, where did I get later from? That's not even right here. Gacy then inflicts acts of torture including burning with cigars, making his captive imitate a horse as he sat on their back and pulled up on makeshift reins around their necks, and violation with foreign objects such as dildos and prescription bottles. Ciao. After he had lower body backdoor assaulted his captive. To immobilize his captive's legs before engaging in acts of torture, Gacy frequently manacled. Ain't that how you say it? I forgot already. Manacled. Where I lost my place. Immobilize captive leg. Manacled their ankles to a 2x4 with handcuffs attached at each end. An act inspired by the Houston mass murders. He is also known to have verbally taunted many of his victims throughout their continued abuse. I mean, obviously, why wouldn't he? He's awful. And to have dragged or forced several victims to crawl into his bathroom where he partly drowned them in the bathtub before repeatedly reviving them, enabling him to continue his prolonged assault. This man... In instances when a victim had pleaded to be killed as opposed to continuing to endure torture, Gacy would make a statement to the effect he would kill his victim when he wanted to. Gacy typically murdered his victims by placing a rope tourniquet around their neck before progressively tightening the rope with a hammer handle. He referred to this act as the rope trick. I'm sick of it. Frequently informing his captive, this is the last trick. In at least one instance, he had read part of Psalm 23. Like, why would you bring the Lord into this? And him being our shepherd. And him making us to lie down in green pastures. And leading us beside the still waters. Why would he bring God into this? As he tightened the rope around his victim's neck. Occasionally, the victim had convulsed for an hour or two before dying, although several victims died by asphyxiation from cloth gags stuffed deep into their throat. Except for his two final victims, all were murdered between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. After Gacy's death, after death, I just be reading any and everything. I just be making stuff up in my head. After death, Gacy usually stored the victims' bodies under his bed for up to 24 hours before burying his victim in the crawl space, where he periodically poured quicklime to hasten the decomposition of his victims. Some victims' bodies were taken to his garage and embalmed prior to their burial, which, why you couldn't just do that with all of them? Because your house was stinking. Why you couldn't just not kill nobody? But if you had to kill somebody, why you couldn't embalm these people so your neighbors wouldn't be like, why this man's house stinking? And so the police wouldn't be all up in your house like, why is your house stinking? Gacy's first known murder occurred on January 3rd, 1972. This is the murder of Timothy Mccoy, if you're following along on the Wikipedia. According to Gacy's later account, following a family party on the evening of January 2nd, he decided to drive to the Civic Center in the Loop to view a display of ice sculptures. In the early hours of the following morning, he then lured a 16-year-old named Timothy Jack Mccoy from Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal into his car. Mccoy was traveling from Michigan to Omaha, Nebraska. Gacy took Mccoy on a sightseeing tour of Chicago and then drove him to his home with the promise that he could spend the night and be driven back to the station in time to catch his bus. Prior to McCoy's identification, he was known simply as Greyhound Busboy. That's terrible. Gacy claimed he woke up early the following morning to find McCoy standing in his bedroom doorway with a kitchen knife in his hand. I don't believe a second of it. He then jumped from his bed, and McCoy raised both arms in a gesture of surrender, tilting the knife upwards and accidentally cutting Gacy's forearm. Gacy twisted the knife from McCoy's wrist, banged his head against the bedroom wall, kicked him against his wardrobe, and walked towards him. McCoy then kicked Gacy in the stomach, doubling him over. Gacy then grabbed McCoy, shouting, "MF'er, I'll kill you." He then wrestled McCoy to the floor and stabbed him repeatedly in the chest as he straddled him. As McCoy lay dying, Gacy claimed he washed the knife in his bathroom, then went to his kitchen and saw an open carton of eggs and a slab of unsliced bacon on the kitchen table. McCoy had also set the table for two. He had walked into Gacy's room to wake him while absent-mindedly carrying the kitchen knife in his hand. Gacy buried McCoy in his crawl space and later covered the grave with a layer of concrete. Like, girl, it's just not coming together for me. I think you just killed this man. I think he's trying to make up a story that my first murder was an accident, but then I got the bug for killing. Like, no, I think he just had the bug for killing and killed this man. Because you already have been lower body backdoor assaulting people. You've already been to jail for touching on that boy from the JCs. You're already doing crimes, and you expect me to believe that you found this young boy, this 16-year-old boy, which, blonde white boy, which was your type, and you decided, oh, I'm just going to take him on a tour of the city, and then I'm going to drop him back off at the bus station in the morning, yada yada, without murder. No, without intentions of assaulting this man lower bodily, without intentions of doing whatever to this boy. Yeah, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it. Gacy buried McCoy in his crawl space and later covered his grave with a layer of concrete. In an interview several years after his arrest, Gacy said that immediately after killing Mccoy, he felt totally drained, yet noted that he stabbed Mccoy as he listened to the gurgulations and gasping for air. That as he stabbed Mccoy and he listened to the gurgulations and gasping for air, that he had experienced a mind-numbing orgasm. He added, "That's when I realized death was the ultimate thrill." Second murder. Gacy said the second time he committed murder was around January 1974. His victim remains unidentified. Gacy strangled him and then placed the body in his closet before burial. He later stated that bodily fluids leaked from the victim's mouth and nose, staining his carpet. Well, duh. As a result, Gacy regularly stuffed cloth rags in the victim's own... Gacy regularly stuffed cloth rags, the victim's own underwear, or a sock into the mouths of subsequent victims to prevent such a leakage from occurring, because God help us if his carpet is stained. Oh, we couldn't have such a horrible crime in this house. A carpet stain? My girl, you stabbed somebody. Didn't that leave a blood stain? Am I tripping? You stabbed him in the bedroom. And then you buried this other man in the closet, which means there was carpet in the bedroom, I'm assuming. Wasn't no blood. Whatever, girl. Murder of John Butkovich. On July 31st, 1975, John Butkovich, an 18-year-old PDM employee from Lombard, disappeared. Butkovich's car was found parked near the corner of Sheridan and Lawrence, with his jacket and wallet inside, and the keys still in the ignition. The day before his disappearance, Butkovich had confronted Gacy over 2 weeks' outstanding back pay. Butkovich's father, a Yugoslav immigrant, called Gacy, who claimed he was happy to help search for his son but was sorry Butkovich had run away. When questioned by police, Gacy said Butkovich and 2 friends had arrived at his house demanding the overdue pay. But they had reached a compromise and all 3 had left. Over the following 3 years, Butkovich's parents called the police more than 100 times, urging them to investigate Gacy further. Me too, girl. I'm urging. Gacy later admitted to encountering Butkovich, exiting his car at the corner of West Lawrence Avenue, waving to attract his attention. According to Gacy, Butkovich approached his car stating, "I want to talk to you." Gacy invited Butkovich into his car and then invited him back to his home, ostensibly to settle the issue of overdue wages. I just don't think so. I don't think this boy would leave his identification, his jacket, and his keys in the ignition by being invited to this man's home. It very much gave, I'll just drive over there. You don't have to bring me back. That's crazy. Let me just drive to your house. No, you abducted this boy. At his home, Gacy offered Butkovich a drink, then conned him into allowing his wrists to be cuffed behind his back. I don't believe it. Gacy later confessed to having sat on the kid's chest for a while before he strangled him. He stowed Butkovich's body in his garage, intending to bury the body later in the crawl space. When his wife and stepdaughters returned home earlier than expected, Gacy buried Butkovich's body under the concrete floor of the tool room extension of his garage in an empty space where he had initially intended to dig a drain tile. I just don't believe it. I don't think this boy will leave his keys in the ignition of the car and get in Gacy's car and just be like, yeah, let's ride over to your house and let me have a drink too. And let me, no, it's just not adding up for me. In addition, we're on the cruising years. In addition to being the year his business expanded, Gacy freely admitted 1975 was also when he began to increase the frequency of his excursions for sex with young males. He often referred to these jaunts as cruising, as literally everybody back in 1970, whatever, called looking for love in all the wrong places. Like, girl, this is not your word. Gacy committed most of his murders between 1976 and 1978. as he largely lived alone following his divorce. He later referred to these as his cruising years because he is not a talented wordsmith. Although Gacy remained gregarious and civic-minded, several neighbors noticed erratic changes in his behavior after his 1976 divorce. This included seeing him keeping company with young males, hearing his car arrive or depart in the early hours of the morning, or seeing lights in his home switch on and off in the early hours. Now, the neighbors need to get a life, because why is y'all looking all in this man? I mean, yes, he's a murderer and everything, but like, why y'all in this man's house? Just nosy. One neighbor later recollected that for several years, the sounds of muffled, high-pitched screaming, shouting, and crying had repeatedly awakened her and her son in the early morning hours. Like, girl, okay, so you being nosy, you looking all in the window, looking at the light switch on and off, and you hear all this muffled screaming, and you smell these terrible smells, and you didn't say, you know what? Let's get the police over to his house. Y'all are nuts. Y'all are insane. Girl, she needs to be on death row as well. Because what in the world? She identified the sounds of emanating from a house adjacent to theirs on West Somerdale Avenue. Like, girl. 1976. 1 month after his divorce was finalized, Gacy abducted and murdered 18-year-old Daryl Sampson. He was last seen alive in Chicago on April 6, 1976. Gacy buried him under the dining room, with a section of cloth lodged in his throat. 5 weeks later, on the afternoon of May 14th, 15-year-old Randall Reffitt disappeared shortly after returning to his uptown home from a dental appointment. He was last seen by his grandmother later that afternoon. The hover link feature, is there a way to turn it off on Wikipedia? Because I be trying to read and it gets in my way. Hours after Reffitt was last seen by his family, 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton vanished as he walked home from his sister's apartment. He and Reffitt were close acquaintances. Both were buried together in the crawl space, and investigators believe the two were murdered on the same evening. On June 3rd, Gacy killed a 17-year-old Lakeview teenager named Michael Bonin. Or Bonin. I don't know. He disappeared while traveling from Chicago to Waukegan? Anybody in Salt Lake City, let me know. Most populous city in the county of Lake County. Anybody in Lake County, Illinois, let me know. Gacy strangled Bonin with a ligature and buried him under the spare bedroom. 10 days later, Gacy murdered a 16-year-old uptown youth named William Carroll and buried him in a common grave in the crawl space. Carroll seemed to have been the first of 4 victims known to have been murdered between June 13th and August 6th, 1976. The 3 were between 16 and 17 years old, and one unidentified murder victim appears to have been an adult. On August 5th, a 16-year-old Minnesota youth named James Hackinson is last known to have phoned his family, possibly from Gacy's home. Hackinson died of suffocation. His body was buried in the crawl space beneath the body of a 17-year-old Bentonville youth named Rick Johnston, who was last seen alive on August 6th. Gacy is thought to have murdered 2 further unidentified males between August and October 1976. On October 24th, Gacy abducted and killed teenage friends Kenneth Parker and Michael Marino. The 2 were last seen outside a restaurant on Clark Street in Chicago. 2 days later, a 19-year-old construction worker, William Bundy, disappeared after informing his family he was to attend a party. Bundy died of suffocation. Gacy buried the body beneath his master bedroom. He had apparently worked for Gacy. Between November and December 1976, Gacy murdered a 21-year-old named Francis Alexander. His last contact with his family was a phone call to his mother made sometime in November. Alexander was buried in the crawl space directly beneath the room Gacy used as his office. In December 1976, another PDM employee, a 17-year-old Gregory Godsick, disappeared. His girlfriend last saw him outside her house after he had driven her home following a date. Gacy had worked for PDM for only 3 weeks before he disappeared. He had informed his family that Gacy had him dig trenches for some kind of drain tiles in his crawl space. Gacy's car was later found abandoned in Niles. His parents and older sister Eugenia contacted Gacy about Gacy's disappearance. Gacy claimed that he had run away from his home, having indicated before that he wished to do so. Gacy also claimed to have received an answering machine message from Gacy shortly after he disappeared. When asked if he could play back the message to Gacy's parents, Gacy said he had erased it. So nobody is checking and seeing that, like, hey, everybody from Gacy's construction company is going missing. His house stinks. We hear muffled screaming and we see the lights clicking on and off in the evening. Like, girl, what? Child. On January 20th, 1977, Gacy, we're in the 1977 section if you're following along on the Wikipedia. Gacy lured 19-year-old John Cizik, S-Z-Y-C, Cizik, I think, to his house on the pretext of buying his Plymouth Satellite. What is that? Oh, it's a car. He later confessed to strangling Cizik in his spare bedroom, claiming Rossi was asleep in the house the following morning. Gacy later sold the car to Rossi for $300. Now, I don't remember who Rossi is, but okay. 2 months later, on March 15th, a 20-year-old Michigan native named John Prestige. What a sickening last name, honey. Prestige. God rest his soul. Disappeared. Prestige was last seen leaving a North Side. Prestige was last seen leaving a near North Side restaurant. He was buried in the crawl space above the body of Francis Alexander. Shortly before his disappearance, Prestige had mentioned he had obtained work with a local contractor. I wonder who. Gacy murdered one additional unidentified youth and buried him in the crawl space in the spring or early summer of 1977. The exact time of his murder is unknown. On July 5th, Gacy killed a 19-year-old from Crystal Lake, Matthew Bowman. Bowman's mother last saw him at a suburban train station. He had intended to travel to Harwood Heights for a scheduled court appointment regarding an unpaid parking ticket. The following month, Rossi was arrested for stealing gasoline while driving Cizik's car. Like, girl, the gas station attendant noted the license plate and police traced the car to Gacy's house. Like, child. When questioned, Gacy told officers that Cizik had sold the car to him in February, saying he needed the money to leave town. Why everybody work for you leaving town? Quote unquote. Like, girl, please. A check of the VIN confirmed that the car had belonged to Cizik. The police did not pursue the matter further, although they did inform Cizik's mother that her son had sold his car. I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of John Wayne Gacy. By the end of 1977, it is known Gacy had murdered 6 more young men between the... Girl, who's texting me at this hour? Let me put you on D&D. Girl! Let me put the computer on D&D. Okay. Gacy had murdered 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21. The first of these victims was 18-year-old Robert Gilroy, the son of a Chicago police sergeant, last seen alive on September 15th. Gilroy lived just 4 blocks from Gacy's house. He was murdered and buried in the crawl space. On September 12th, Gacy had flown to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to supervise a remodeling project and did not return to Chicago until September 16th. Because Gacy is known to have been in another state at the time, Gilroy was last seen... Gilroy was last seen. This is cited to support Gacy's claim of assistance from one or more I don't know where it stopped, but Gilroy died and 19-year-old former U.S. Marine John Mowry disappeared. Gacy strangled him and buried his body beneath the master bedroom. Girl, I don't know why my computer just be like, enough is enough. On October 17th, 21-year-old Minnesota native Russell Nelson disappeared. He was last seen outside a Chicago bar. Nelson was looking for contracting work. Gacy murdered him and buried him beneath the guest bedroom. Less than 4 weeks later, Gacy murdered a 16-year-old Kalamazoo teenager named Robert Winch and buried him in the crawl space. On November 18th, 20-year-old father of one, Tommy Bowling, disappeared after leaving a Chicago bar. 3 weeks after the murder of Tommy Bowling, on December 9th, a 19-year-old U.S. Marine, David Talsma, disappeared after informing his mother he was to attend a rock concert in Hammond, Indiana. Gacy strangled Talsma with a ligature and buried him in the crawlspace close to the body of John Mowry. On December 30th, Gacy abducted 19-year-old student Robert Donnelly from a Chicago bus stop at gunpoint. Gacy drove him to his home where he lower body assaulted, tortured, and repeatedly dunked Donnelly's head into a bathtub until he passed out. Gacy taunted him with statements such as, "Aren't we playing fun games tonight?" Donnelly later testified at Gacy's trial that he was in such pain that he asked Gacy to kill him. Gacy replied, "I'm getting round to it." After several hours, Gacy drove Donnelly to his workplace and released him, warning them that if he complained to police that they would not believe him. What was the reason? Why you release him? I'm confused. I mean, I'm glad you did. I'm glad he lived. But wow. What I don't get it. 1978. Donnelly reported the assault and the police questioned Gacy on January 6th, 1978. Gacy admitted to having a slave sex relationship with Donnelly, but insisted everything was consensual, adding that he didn't pay the kid the money he had promised him. The police believed him and filed no charges. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oh my God. I want to punch this bitch in his mouth. The following month, Gacy killed 19-year-old William Kindred, who disappeared on February 16th after telling his fiancée, who knew Gacy, that he was to spend the evening in a bar. Kindred was the final victim Gacy buried in his crawl space. On March 21st, Gacy lured 26-year-old Jeffrey Rignall into his car. Shortly after Rignall entered the car, Gacy chloroformed him and drove him to his house, where his arms and head were restrained in a pillory device, which is the thing with the, like the medieval where you got your hands and your head going through like a wood thing, and then they like throw tomatoes at you or something. Anyway, it was affixed to the ceiling and his feet were locked into another device. Gacy explained to Rignall that he had complete control over him and that he intended to do whatever he wanted to him, when he wanted, and how he wanted. He then lower body assaulted and tortured Rignall with various instruments, including lit candles and whips, and repeatedly chloroformed him into unconsciousness. Gacy then drove Rignall to Chicago's Lincoln Park, where he was dumped unconscious but alive. I am so sick of him. I'm so sick of John Wayne Gacy. Oh my God. Rignall managed to stagger to his girlfriend's apartment. Police were informed of the assault but did not investigate Gacy. I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. How many people have to go to the police and say, hey, John Wayne Gacy up at 8312 Summers Lane, or whatever the house number was, has lower body assaulted me. He put lit candles in my behind. He had me taped to the ceiling. Like, How many people have to smell the smell of rotting corpses at this man's house, hear screams, and see the lights flickering on and off like Nosferatu on SpongeBob? For the girls to stop this, for the police officers who are there to protect and serve. To protect and serve. Am I losing my mind? I've had enough. Rignall was able to recall, through the haze of that night, the Oldsmobile, the Kennedy Expressway, and particular side streets. He and two friends stalked out the Cumberland exit of the expressway, and in April, Rignall saw the Oldsmobile, which he and his friends followed to 8213 West Somerdale. The police obtained an arrest warrant, and Gacy was arrested on July 15th. He faced trial for battery against Rignall. By 1978, the crawl space had no room for further bodies. Gacy later confessed to the police that he considered stowing bodies in his attic initially, but had been worried about complications arising from leakage. Therefore, he chose to dispose of his victims off the I-55 bridge into the Des Plaines River. Des Plaines? I don't know. Gacy stated he had thrown 5 bodies into this river in 1978. One of which he believed landed on a passing barge, which is a boat. Only 4 bodies were ever found. The first known victim thrown off the I-55 bridge into the Des Plaines River was 20-year-old Timothy O'Rourke. He was murdered. Why can't I? Am I okay? No, I'm not okay. I'm reading about John Wayne fucking Gacy. He was murdered in mid-June after leaving his Dover Street apartment to purchase cigarettes. Shortly before his disappearance, O'Rourke had told his roommate a contractor on the northwest side had offered him a job. Why is it not in the paper that people are going missing after being contracted for contracting? Like, I'm not understanding how people are still taking contracting jobs in Chicago or thereabout when people who are contracting are going missing. I'm not understanding. On November 4th, Gacy killed 19-year-old Frank Landingen, Landingen. His naked body was found in the Des Plaines River in Channahon on November 12th. On November 24th, a 20-year-old Elmwood Park resident, James Mazzara, disappeared after sharing Thanksgiving dinner with his family. Mazzara had informed his sister the day prior to his disappearance that he was working in the construction industry and doing all right. Nobody's putting these pieces together, and I'm not understanding. He was last seen alive walking in the direction of Bughouse Square carrying a suitcase. Murder of Robert Peast. I think it's Peast. It might be Peist. I don't know. But this is the young man whose disappearance finally led to this man's arrest. Girl, is there a reason you bumping outside my house like that? Driving slow? You know my policy, drive faster or shoot. If you driving slow, must be either to spot somebody and kill them, shoot them up, drive by, or there's no other reason. So why are you driving slow? Drive faster or shoot. Driving slow in my name. Like, girl, it works me. It works my nerves. Okay. On the afternoon of December 11th, 1978, Gacy visited the Nissan pharmacy in Des Plaines. Des Plaines? I don't know. Let me do my work and figure out how to pronounce Des Plaines or Des Plaines, Illinois. It's pronounced Des Plaines. Okay, great. According to Glenn Farclass in 2015 on wordreference.com, child. Okay. Gacy visited the pharmacy in Des Plaines to discuss a potential remodeling deal with the store owner, Phil Torf, while he was within earshot of 15-year-old part-time employee Robert Peist. Peist? I don't know. Gacy mentioned his firm often hired teenage boys at a starting wage of $5 per hour, almost double the pay Peist earned at the pharmacy. Shortly after Gacy left the pharmacy, Peist's mother arrived at the store to drive her son home so the family could celebrate her birthday together. Peist asked his mother to wait, adding that, I'm sorry about switching up I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and I apologize. Asked his mother to wait, adding that some contractor wants to talk to me about a job. He left the store at 9 p.m., promising to return shortly. He was murdered shortly after 10 p.m. at Gacy's home. Gacy later stated that at his house, he asked Peist whether there was anything he wouldn't do for the right price, to which the young man replied that he did not mind working hard. In response, Gacy stated good money could be earned by hustling, although the young man was dismissive. I'm not understanding. Why would you tell this boy to hustle? Girl, hustling in this context, I'm assuming, means prostitution. Gacy then duped the young man into the handcuffs before saying, I'm going to lower body assault you and you can't do anything about it, as the young man began weeping. He also stated that as he placed the rope around his neck, the boy was crying, scared. Gacy admitted to having received a phone call from a business acquaintance as the boy lay dying, suffocating on his bedroom floor. This boy's mama's birthday. She probably never celebrated another birthday in her life. I want to cry. Investigation. When Peist failed to return, his family filed a missing person report with the Des Plaines police. Torf named Gacy as the contractor Peist had most likely left the store to talk to about a job. Lieutenant Joseph Kozinczak, Kozenczak. When I tell you the Polish, honey, are out here, the Polish are out here. And that's no shade, congratulations to them for being Polish. My father grew up around this area and said that, I think it was the Polish. I might be just making up a nationality, but he said it was a bunch of them. And congratulations to them. Anyway, Lieutenant John, whose last name I'm not sure of, whose son attended Maine West High School, like Peist, I don't know, chose to investigate Gacy further. Having spoken with Peist's mother we're just going to say Peist, mother on the morning of December 12th, the police officer, honey, Joseph, became convinced Peist had not run away from home. On a routine check of Gacy's criminal background revealed that he had an outstanding battery charge against him in Chicago and had served a prison sentence in Iowa for the lower body backdoor assault of a 15-year-old boy. Which, if he could check that, literally anybody else in the police department could have checked that, and we could have stopped many a murder. But no, Chicago PD was just like, girl, who cares? Ugh, I hate it. I hate it. Everything about this case I hate. Officer Joseph and 2 Des Plaines police officers visited Gacy at his home the following evening. Gacy indicated that he had seen 2 youths working at the pharmacy and that he had asked one of them, whom he believed to be Peist. What'd I say? Peist? I said we was gonna call him Peist. Whether there were any remodeling materials behind the store. He was adamant, however, that he had not offered Peist a job, and and that he had only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m., as he had left his appointment book at the store. Gacy promised to come to the station later that evening to make a statement confirming this, indicating he was unable to do so at that moment, as his uncle had just died. When questioned as to how soon he could come to the police station, he responded, "You guys are very rude. Don't you have any respect for the dead?" I want to take this hammer, the hammer I have right here in my hand, and bash his face in. I want to bash his face in. Fully in. Like, I want his face to be in reverse. I want the front of his head going out the back of his head. At 3:20 a.m., Gacy arrived at the police station covered in mud, claiming he had been involved in a car accident. On returning to the police station later that day, Gacy denied any involvement in Peace's disappearance and repeated that he had not offered him a job. When asked why he returned to the pharmacy, Gacy reiterated that he had done so in response to a phone call from Torf informing him that he had left his appointment book at the store. Detectives had already spoken with Torf, who denied calling Gacy. Like, why would you? It's checkable. Gacy, it's checkable. Why would you? Child. Plus, he was supposed to be right back because his mama was at the store getting ready to pick him up, so I'm not understanding why he would have even called. Whatever. At the request of detectives, Gacy prepared a written statement detailing his movements on December 11th. Okay, we're going to skip ahead. They got a search warrant, honey. They went into his house and they searched his property and found several suspicious items, including several police badges, a 6mm Bravada starter pistol, a syringe, and a hypodermic needle in a cabinet in Gacy's bedroom, handcuffs, several books on homosexuality and pederasty. I'm sorry, pederasty, little boy liking, with titles such as The Great White Swallow and Pretty Boys Must Die. 7 pornographic films, capsules of amyl nitrate, and 18-inch dildo in Gacy's bedroom. I'm just having a hard time with all of this. A 39-inch 2x4 with 2 holes drilled into each end, bottles of Valium and atropine, and several driver's licenses were found in the northwest bedroom. A blue hooded parka was found atop a toolbox inside the laundry room, and underwear too small to fit Gacy was located inside a bathroom closet. In the northwest bedroom, investigators found a class of 1975 Marine West High School ring engraved with the initials JAS. Investigators also recovered a Nissan Pharmacy photo receipt from a trash can alongside a 36-inch section of nylon rope. The Des Plaines police, we're moving on to surveillance. The Des Plaines police confiscated Gacy's Oldsmobile and other construction work vehicles. Police assigned a two-man surveillance teams to monitor Gacy on a rotational 12-hour basis as they continued their investigation into his background. I'm not understanding why they did not take him in. Take him in. I'm not understanding. Oh, this is bothering me. I'm sorry. They continued their investigation, child, whatever, and potential involvement in Peace's disappearance. Let's see. They obtained on December 15th, Des Plaines investigators obtained further details of Gacy's battery charge, learning the complainant Jeffrey Rignall had reported that Gacy had lured him into his car, then chloroformed, lower body assaulted, and tortured him before dumping him, with severe chest and facial burns and rectal bleeding, in Lincoln Park the following morning. In an interview with Gacy's former wife, the same day they learned of the disappearance of John Butkovich. The same day the Maine West High School ring was traced to John Allen Cizik. An interview with Sizek's mother revealed that several items from her son's apartment were also missing, including a Motorola TV set. By December 16th, Gacy was becoming affable with his surveillance detectives. Okay, I'm going to skip past this. He became friends with the detectives. They went out for drinks, and he invited them into the house for food. Like, into the stinking, rotting corpse home. I'm losing my mind. So he invited them to a restaurant for a meal, and then the next morning invited them to another restaurant for breakfast. And they went. And at one point during the conversation, Gacy remarked, clowns can get away with murder. Like, sick of it. We're skipping ahead. He had arrest warrants. He did polygraphs, yada yada. And then on the evening of December 20th, Gacy drove to his lawyer's office in Park Ridge to attend a scheduled meeting, ostensibly to discuss the progress of his civil suit. Yada blah blah blah. He confessed to the young man, to the killing of a young man. He picked up a copy of the Daily Herald from the lawyer's desk, pointed to a front page article covering the disappearance of Robert Peast, and said, "This boy is dead, he's in a river." He then decided to give a long confession, child, to the what's his face, to the lawyer, and he fell asleep midway through the confession because he was drunk. The lawyer immediately arranged a psychiatric appointment for Gacy at 9 a.m. that morning. And then the lawyer was like, "Hey, you confessed to murder." And Gacy was like, "I got stuff to do. I can't worry about that right now." And I'm just... Gacy later recollected his memories of his final day of freedom as being hazy, adding he knew his arrest was inevitable and that he intended to visit his friends and say his final farewells. After leaving his lawyer's office, Gacy drove to a gas station where, in the course of filling his rental car, he handed a small bag of cannabis to the attendant, who immediately handed the bag to the surveillance officers, adding that Gacy had told him, "The end is coming for me. These guys are going to kill me," and they should have. He then drove home to the home of a fellow contractor and friend, hugged him before bursting into tears and saying, "I've been a bad boy. I've killed 30 people, give or take a few." Child, I'm sick of it. He had a rosary at some point and he was praying, child. It's like, girl, you should have been praying before you killed them people. Long story short, he went to jail. Like, they searched his house. They found loads and loads of victims and loads of horrible looking things. They searched the river. They found a couple bodies. And then he was brought to trial on February 6, 1980, charged with 33 murders. He attempted to convince the doctors he had multiple personality disorder. He claimed to have 4 personalities. And I just don't have time for it. I don't have time. His lawyers opted to have him plead not guilty by reason of insanity. I don't have time. I'm so sorry that I don't have the time, but I don't. And I'm not sorry. Why would I be sorry for that? Long story short, child, he was sentenced to death. He was on death row for 14 years. Let's see. He appealed. In 1984, he appealed, and the Supreme Court upheld his conviction and ordered his execution by lethal injection on November 14th. So yeah, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. The Supreme Court formally set an execution date for May 10th, 1994. So then he was killed on May 10th, 1994. His last meal, he had a bucket of KFC, a dozen fried shrimp, french fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. I don't understand why they give death row inmates that have actually done crimes a last meal where they can just have whatever. Crazy. So anyway, child, he was killed, and his final spoken words were reported to be "kiss my ass." I don't have time. I just don't. I'm so sorry that I'm not sorry. I don't know why I keep saying I'm sorry. I don't have time for this nut. He's nuts. 5 victims remain unidentified, 4 of whom had been buried beneath Gacy's crawl space, and 1 buried approximately 15 feet from the barbecue pit in his backyard. They still don't know who they are. That's very, very sad. And maybe he killed some other people. Chicago investigators think that the number could be as high as 45, but they only found 33. And that's all. That's it. That's all I can give Gacy. I'm so drained. I'm exhausted because I hate him. I hate him. I'm sorry. He did some paintings and people bought them. Like, I've had enough. That's it. That's it. I'm done talking about